Visuals on your screen this moment, as you can see, a sea of red with EFF supporters that have gathered in support of the EFF leader Julius Malema. Let's pick up Sakina Kamwendo now, who joins us. SK, we saw on the other end of the court precinct, we saw what looked like EFF supporters entangled in a bit of a scuffle with what appeared to be the officials. What can you tell us about that? Did you see it, and what are you seeing where you are right now?
Welcome back to East London as I try to have myself heard above the chanting, the singing behind me, and I can tell you this is behind me, the road leading to the court, and in front of me is the stage on which Julius Malema, from where he will be addressing the EFF supporters who've come out in their numbers. And in the street behind the stage, I can actually see from my vantage point more EFF members marching through the streets of East London, and the traffic being brought to a standstill here in the city of East London. It is, of course, as we await to find out what's happening in the pre-sentencing hearing inside the court. Abongile Yankees is, of course, there, but we do know that they've had to move to a bigger courtroom, and, of course, waiting to see how things proceed there. But Mkolisi, you, of course, will have a better vantage point in terms of what's happening there. But behind me here, the EFF faithful coming out in their numbers. And of course, we have Amini, who is the EFF faithful, now addressing the crowd. As I can't compete with this, I'm going to let you listen.
Fighters, this is what is happening inside.
But as you can see there, we take you back to East London. Those are, in fact, visuals, as you see there from the East London Magistrate Court, a sea of red EFF members coming out in their numbers to support their leader, Julius Malema, who awaits sentencing after being convicted on charges related to the discharge of a firearm at the EFF's 5th anniversary rally. We actually have our reporter, Abongile Janchis, inside, or was monitoring proceedings inside the East London Magistrate Court in the Eastern Cape, and he joins us now to bring us the very latest from there. Abongile, good afternoon to you. You've been following proceedings inside court. Just take us through what has taken place thus far.
Well, we've seen the pre-sentencing report by the social worker that was called by the defense, particularly Mr. Malema's lawyers, where they were stating the reasons why he should be granted leniency, that he shouldn't see jail time. Jessie Thompson, that's the name of the social worker, she has recommended that at least a suspended sentence should be accorded to him, and that a fine be imposed. But him going directly to prison, she says that the act of discharging that firearm was in a means of celebratory mood, not even something that was of a crime that was being committed or endangering the lives of the people. So she's saying that Mr. Malema is a good community member in standing and does a lot of charitable work. So those things could affect the society. And he also mentioned that she cares a lot for the elderly, and he has an initiative of delivering beds when he saw that people elderly in Shishogo were sleeping on the floor, and that's where he stepped in to ensure that he even delivered a house for someone who's disabled. So he's been doing a lot of charitable work, and him being a revolutionary, those are some of the things that could deter him from not being in parliament should he go to prison. So those are some of the things that she mentioned in her pre-sentencing report. The reason for this adjournment now is because the prosecutor wants to go through this pre-sentencing report, because it was the first time this morning that he got a glimpse of it. So he wants to ensure that he doesn't miss a thing.
All right, Mr. Malema, the matter is then postponed, as if I hear correctly, and can you hear me? Because 15 April, you are on bail. For logistic purposes, I'm saying you are warned for Regional Court 4, because I can't say warned for High Court.
It's not warning, it's a warning, it's free.
Sorry.
The summons to court to
I wonder why it's refused. Okay. Okay, that part is not performed. Nonetheless, all right, you are warned, and I'm going to say Regional Court 4, so that there isn't a specific venue identified, that there's no misunderstanding. But obviously, before that date and on the date, everyone will know as to where we will convene. We will also, if need be, then continue on 16 April. Thank you.
The defense team called only one witness, social worker Jessie Thompson. In her report, Thompson suggested that Malema is not a candidate for direct imprisonment. She recommended a fine or suspended sentence to be imposed. She argued that Malema has a good reputation and is charitable to the less fortunate.
Your Worship, if I look at the detail of the case, the fact that it was a celebratory shooting, the intent was not to harm anyone else, that even the position was for a very short period of time, there was no intent to keep it for a prolonged period. Together with that, if I look at that and I look at society and I say we are removing a person from society that is contributing positive to society, that is a family person, and removing people from the families also have a ripple effect on society.
During cross-examination, the state argued that the report has no basis to the charges faced by Malema. It says Thompson did not have adequate time to conduct a thorough assessment of Malema, as she only spent 5 hours with him. The state says it will oppose a fine or suspended sentence for Malema.
As recommended, custodial sentence, arguing for an appropriate sentence when the matter returns.
I think interesting session. I think the defense did their best to try and paint a picture of Mr. Malema as being an upstanding citizen who made a mistake once, and this was an isolated event. But if I look at the cross-examination from Advocate Joel Caesar, and I look at the questions that Magistrate Toinette Olivier asked, I don't think they were swayed at all. She also mentioned the minimum sentence for the illegal possession of a firearm is 15 years imprisonment. So I don't think.
Malema has maintained that this case is a political witch hunt against him. His co-accused, Adrian Snyman, was acquitted of the charges due to a lack of evidence. He believes in his innocence and maintains that the firearm in question is a toy.
The case has crumbled before the magistrate, and the prosecution messed up the case, and they must take full responsibility. But it's always the case when you pursue politics instead of pursuing the law. Whether you like the person or not, you must look at what does the law say, not what are my political feelings or views about this particular individual. That's what makes it a political trial, which comes to an end today, and will wait for the judgment.
Lobby group AfriForum believes Malema deserves a jail term due to the seriousness of the matter.
It's very important to remember that these charges that Mr. Malema were found guilty on are actually very serious charges. If we look at just one example, for instance, the illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition, there have been cases where people have been sentenced to up to 15 years imprisonment for that. So it's very serious charges. Of course, there might be mitigating conditions and circumstances that the judge takes into consideration, but I would be very surprised and I would be very skeptical of the process if we at least didn't see a few years prison.
Julius Malema's sentencing has sent political shockwaves across South Africa, reopening deep national debates about accountability, political power, and the boundaries between radical rhetoric and the rule of law. For years, Malema has stood as one of the most polarizing figures in the country's post-apartheid political era. His legal troubles, culminating in a court sentence, mark a moment that many analysts say could redefine South Africa's political landscape. Malema rose from the structures of the African National Congress Youth League to become the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, a party built on confrontational politics, mass mobilization, and sharp criticism of the political and economic elite. His political style has consistently blurred the line between provocation and principle, making him both a hero to supporters who see him as fearless and a threat to critics who argue he undermines democratic stability. The sentencing stems from long-running legal proceedings linked to statements, conduct, and actions that authorities argued crossed legal boundaries. Courts emphasized that political status does not grant immunity and that public figures carry heightened responsibility because of their influence. The ruling reinforced a central constitutional principle: no individual, regardless of popularity or political power, stands above the law. Supporters of Malema argue that the case represents selective enforcement and political pressure. They point to South Africa's history of legal institutions being used during apartheid to suppress dissent, warning against repeating patterns where radical voices are disciplined more aggressively than establishment figures. To them, the sentence is not merely a legal outcome, but a political signal aimed at containing disruptive opposition politics. Opponents see the ruling differently. They argue it demonstrates the strength of South Africa's judiciary and the resilience of its democratic institutions. In their view, inflammatory rhetoric, especially when it touches on violence or weapons, poses real risks in a society still marked by inequality, social tension, and historical trauma. They frame the sentence as a necessary corrective rather than a political attack. The immediate aftermath of the verdict revealed the country's political divide. Supporters rallied, framing Malema as a victim of a system afraid of economic transformation. Opposition figures and civil society groups urged calm, warning against protests escalating into unrest. Security forces remained on alert, reflecting the state's awareness of Malema's ability to mobilize large crowds quickly. International observers have also taken note. South Africa is often viewed as a bellwether democracy on the African continent, and the sentencing of a high-profile opposition leader naturally draws global attention. Some analysts argue the case demonstrates judicial independence, while others caution that perception matters as much as legality in maintaining democratic legitimacy. Within the EFF, the sentence has triggered urgent internal discussions. The party has long been built around Malema's personality, charisma, and confrontational leadership style. Questions now arise about succession, continuity, and whether the party can maintain momentum if its leader faces legal constraints. While senior figures have publicly projected unity, political history suggests moments like this test party structures deeply. The ruling also intersects with broader debates about political speech in South Africa. Malema's career has repeatedly tested how far revolutionary language can go in a constitutional democracy. Courts have increasingly drawn clearer lines, signaling that metaphor, symbolism, and provocation are not unlimited shields when public safety is implicated. Economically, markets and investors monitor political stability closely. While the sentence itself does not alter economic policy, perceptions of unrest or institutional conflict can influence confidence. South Africa's economy remains fragile, facing energy shortages, unemployment, and inequality. Any political crisis risks amplifying these challenges. For younger South Africans, particularly those facing unemployment and disillusionment, Malema represents defiance against a system they feel has failed them. The sentencing risks deepening cynicism if it is perceived as punishment for challenging entrenched power rather than for specific unlawful conduct. This generational dimension may shape political participation for years to come. Legal experts emphasize that appeals and further legal processes remain part of the story. Sentencing is rarely the final chapter, especially in high-profile political cases. The outcome of appeals could either reinforce or complicate public interpretation of the judiciary's role. Historically, South Africa has navigated moments where courts, politicians, and public opinion collide. From corruption cases involving senior ANC figures to constitutional battles over executive power, the judiciary has often stood at the center of national debate. Malema's sentence fits into this broader pattern, reflecting both institutional strength and political tension. Whether this moment marks the beginning of Malema's political decline or a rallying point that strengthens his support remains uncertain. Political history shows that legal pressure can weaken leaders, but it can also elevate them symbolically, turning courtrooms into platforms for political messaging. What is clear is that South Africa has entered another critical phase in its democratic evolution. The sentencing forces the nation to confront uncomfortable questions about equality before the law, freedom of expression, and the responsibilities of leadership in a deeply unequal society. As the political dust settles, attention turns to how institutions, parties, and citizens respond. Will the country move toward calm legal resolution, or will tensions escalate into broader confrontation? The answer will shape not only MALEMA'S future, but the trajectory of South Africa as democracy itself.
You've been watching Echoes of Africa, where every story carries the sound of tomorrow. If this moved you, subscribe now, like, and share so Africa's voice never fades into silence.